The doors of the transport shuttle hissed open, and Kira Sage stepped onto Research Station Gamma for the first time. Her scaled feet made soft clicking sounds on the cold metal floor. To get to this faraway outpost, she had to travel through deep space for 3 full cycles, crossing half of the known galaxy. All of this just to learn about one species. The people. The weird beings from a planet they called Earth. Kira SH was a xenobiologist, and she was one of the best in the Theshan collective. She had looked at a lot of different alien species in a lot of different star systems. But this task was different. Earth had been called a world of death. A planet that was so hostile and dangerous that it seemed like a cosmic joke that any intelligent life could live there at all. The weight was too much. There was a lot of reactive oxygen in the air. The weather was violent and hard to predict. And what about the animals? The animals were scary. But somehow people had lived on this horrible rock. They had done well. They had made progress in civilization, technology, and space travel. They wanted to join the galactic community now. The council had sent researchers like Kira SH to find out if these Deathworlders could be trusted. If it was safe to be around them. She walked through the clean halls of the station, her tail nervously swishing behind her. Other aliens walked by. Some people nodded back. Others stayed away from her, watching her with the same nervous energy she felt. Everyone here was on edge. Everyone knew what this station stood for. Protocols for first contact. The start of something that could bring the galaxy together or tear it apart. She found Station Director Ven waiting for her on the main observation deck. The insectoid stood completely still, and the starlight coming through the huge window shone on his compound eyes. People knew that the Clicktar were careful. They looked at everything. Figured out all the risks. Ven turned to face her as she got closer, and she heard his mandibles click in what she knew was a formal greeting. Xenobiologist Kirich, he said, and the universal comm system turned his voice into something her ears could understand. Hello and welcome to Gamma Station. I hope your trip went smoothly? Long but yes, uneventful, Kirich said as she walked up to the viewport and stood next to him. The blue and green marble of Earth hung in the void outside, both beautiful and scary at the same time. Ven's antennas moved. I've looked at your credentials. Great job on the studies of the Vorten predator. That experience will help you here. Then the people are the predators? Kirich asked, even though she already knew the answer. Oh yes, Ven said in a low voice. Very much so. But that's not what makes them scary. He stopped for a moment as if he were picking his words carefully. They're hard to predict. Feeling. They use both instinct and logic to make decisions. But if you follow the rules, they aren't too dangerous either. Stay away. Don't move quickly. Let them come to you first. Kirich felt her crest rise a little, which was an involuntary fear response that her species had never fully gotten over. You make them sound like animals. Ven said, not wild. Just different. A lot different from anything else you've learned. The door to the observation deck slid open before Kira Sage could answer. She turned around, thinking it was another worker from the station or maybe one of the other researchers. Instead, she came face to face with a person for the first time. The woman walked with a confident, easy gait. Not in a hurry but with a purpose. Works well. She wore dark pants and a light jacket over a plain shirt. Nothing special. There was nothing about her that made it seem like she was trying to impress anyone. But what really caught Kira's attention right away was how she moved. Smooth. Even. Like a hunter going through land they know well. The person stopped at a respectful distance and did something Kira Sage had read about but never seen. She grinned. The lips of the person pulled back, showing flat white teeth. No fangs. No scary show of weapons. Just flat teeth that are arranged in a curve. It ought to have been safe. Even friendly. But Kira Sage's prey instinct screamed. I assume you're Dr. Kira H? The human said in a warm, clear voice. She held out her right hand with her palm open and her fingers slightly spread. The way people say hello. Hello, I'm Dr. Rachel Hayes. During your stay, I will be your point of contact. I'm the one to ask if you want to know anything about people or Earth. Kirich looked at the outstretched hand for a little too long. Her translator worked extra hours to change the way people talked casually into something more formal. She made herself step forward and gently, very gently, put her own clawed hand on Rachel's palm. The skin of the person was warm. Very soft. There are no scales or protective covering at all. Just soft skin. Rachel's grip was soft but strong. She shook Kira's hand twice and then let go. It's a real pleasure to meet you. I have read everything you have written about how predators act. Very interesting. Thank you, Kira said, her voice steadier than she felt. The pleasure is mine. She could really study the person up close. Rachel was a few inches shorter than Kira. Her body looked thin and almost fragile. Kira's species could easily handle the kinds of impacts that would break her thin arms, slender fingers, and narrow torso. No natural armor. No skin that is hard. There are no venomous spines or any other defensive adaptations. But those eyes. Rachel's eyes were on the front of her face and were both looking forward. Eyes of a predator. Eyes made for following prey, judging distances, and focusing on targets with the same accuracy as binoculars. They were a dark brown color and moved around the room all the time, quickly and efficiently taking in everything around them. Not looks of worry. Adding up ones. Rachel went on, I know this must be a lot to take in. She didn't seem to know that Kira was thinking about the analysis. First time meeting a person and all. But don't worry, I won't hurt you. She laughed and it was a light sound that sounded real. Well, I could, but I promise I won't. Kira's nerves didn't calm down at all when someone casually said, biting. Ven's jaws clicked nervously. Dr. Hayes has made a full schedule for your orientation. Tours of habitats, cultural briefings, and biological documentation. Everything you need for your study. Rachel nodded with excitement. Yes. We'll start off slowly so you can get used to it. By the end of the week, you'll know more about people than most people know about themselves. That smile again. What? Nice. Scary. Curious couldn't stop looking at Rachel as she talked about schedules and procedures. Every move was planned. Every movement had a purpose. Her instincts told her that this was a predator. A hunter who looks like a civilized person. But Rachel's words were nice. She spoke softly. Everything about her made me feel safe and welcome. Kira's scientific mind fought with the programming that made her a prey species. This was going to be a very interesting job. You want to go where? Kira's crest flared up without her meaning to, and the scales on her neck rose in a clear sign of fear. She looked at Rachel like the person had just told her to jump out of an airlock without a suit. Rachel stood next to the holographic display in the research lab, looking completely at ease. She moved her fingers over the controls, zooming in on a part of the largest jungle continent on Earth. The thick green canopy went on for thousands of miles in all directions. Rachel pointed to a part of the lowland forest that was especially thick and said, the lowland forests. It's the best place to see Earth's big animals in their natural environment. You want to know how people work? You need to know where we came from. What we lived next to. What made us who we are. Kira's translator had to work extra hours to deal with Rachel's casual tone. The person was talking about walking into one of the most dangerous ecosystems in the known galaxy as if it were a walk in the park. The reports say that Earth's jungles are very dangerous places. The creatures that live there are dangerous, yes, Rachel said, shrugging her shoulders. But I've been through those woods a lot of times. In fact, I grew up not far from there. I spent my childhood camping with my family in similar places. She turned away from the display and looked Kira in the eye. Okay, I understand. You're scared. I promise to keep you safe though. That's what I'm supposed to do here. Kira Sage wanted to say no. Every instinct for survival that her species had developed over millions of years told her to stay on the station, behind strong walls and shields. But she was a scientist. Rachel was correct. She needed to see people in their natural environment if she wanted to really understand them. In their world. In the world that had shaped them into who they were. She heard herself say, how long would we be gone, even though it didn't make sense to her. Rachel's face lit up. A week, maybe less. We'll pack lightly, move quickly, and I'll show you things you've never seen before. Trust me, it'll be worth it. 3 days later, Kira Sage was second-guessing every choice she had made that had brought her to this point. She thought the jungle would be bad, but it was worse. Even with the climate controls on her environmental suit working extra hard, the heat was too much. The air felt thick, like it was almost liquid. There were sounds coming from all sides. Screams, roars, chittering, and buzzing. The jungle was so alive that space stations, which are usually very clean, felt dead in comparison. But what really scared Kira was seeing Rachel move through this horrible place. The person walked ahead, using a simple machete to clear a path through the thick plants. But Kira's attention was drawn to how she moved. Rachel didn't go through the brush. She moved. Without looking, her feet found solid ground. She twisted and turned her body to avoid hanging vines and low branches. She never broke a branch. Never made leaves rustle for no reason. Never made more noise than the quietest whisper of fabric against bark. It was like seeing a ghost move through solid things. Kira, even though she had a lot of scientific training, sounded like a drunk truck driver. Her gear made a clinking sound. Her feet made a crunching sound on the leaves. Her tail got stuck on every third branch. But Rachel never complained or showed her frustration. She moved quietly and quickly, stopping now and then to point something out. Look at those marks from claws. Rachel pointed to deep cuts in a tree trunk about 10 feet off the ground and said quietly, "Look." The marks were new and the wood was still light where the bark had been ripped off. That's a sign of territory. Recently, something big came through here. Courage looked at the marks with more and more fear. Whatever made them had claws that were as long as her arm. Should we go around? Rachel shook her head. No, these are a few days old. Whatever made them is long gone. By now, it's probably hunting on the other side of its range. She ran her fingers over the gouges to see how deep and angled they were. I'd say a big cat. Around 800 pounds. A young man trying to claim his space. How can you know all of that? Curious asked. Rachel smiled, the same creepy predator smile. You learn to read the signs when you grow up here. It's similar to a language. Listen to the forest and it will tell you everything. They kept walking and Curious started to notice other things. Rachel was always looking around. Her eyes moved quickly and efficiently, taking in the canopy, the ground, and the middle distance before starting over. She took deep breaths through her nose and tasted the air every now and then. She stopped at random times and tilted her head to listen to sounds that Curious couldn't even name. The man was hunting. Not for any one thing. Just hunting by instinct. Reading the world around you like Curious would read a data screen. They set up camp in a small clearing next to a stream on the third night. Rachel set up their shelter quickly and easily, as if she had done it 1,000 times before. She made a fire with wood from the area, somehow knowing which pieces would burn clean and which would smoke. Rachel sat on a log and took out their food rations as the sun went down and the jungle changed from day sounds to night sounds. Beautiful night, she said, looking up at the canopy where stars from other worlds peeked through the leaves. Curious sat down by the fire, thankful for its light and warmth. I need to ask you something, Rachel. Go ahead. Are you not scared? Not at all? Curious pointed to the dark jungle around them. We're in a dangerous place right now. There are predators out there that could kill us in a matter of seconds. And you look calm. Rachel thought about the question while she chewed on a protein bar. She said, I guess I'm relaxed. But not because I'm careless or stupid. I'm calm because I know what I'm doing. I have respect for this place. I get it? That makes it less scary. With her half-eaten bar, she pointed into the dark. The razor claw hunts in this area. Most likely the top predator in this area. About 1,200 pounds of pure muscle and a bad attitude. Claws that can cut through your environmental suit like it's paper. Very protective of their space. Mean as hell if you cross it. Curious felt her blood run cold. And we're camping in its area? Rachel's voice was very casual, almost like she was talking to someone. Yeah, most likely. Their ranges are about 50 square miles. We're definitely in someone's yard. Shouldn't we move? Kira tried hard not to sound scared, but she failed miserably. Rachel shrugged and kept adding wood to the fire. We'll be fine. Razor claws hunt by surprise. They don't like open spaces or fire. We're in a clearing where we can see well and there is a nice fire going. We're not very appealing as a target. Kira's translator had a hard time with Rachel's tone. The human's voice didn't sound scared. No worries. There was at least a hint of something else. Something that sounded a lot like waiting. Rachel hoped they would run into this horrible creature. Kira said carefully, You sound almost excited. Rachel looked up from the fire, and for a moment her eyes reflected the flames in a way that made her look very strange. Do I? I guess I am a little bit. I've never seen a razor claw in the wild before. They are very rare and don't like being around people. It would be the best thing ever to see one. That confidence, that complete assurance that everything would be fine, made Curious more uneasy than any amount of fear could have. She understood fear. Fear made sense. But this easy acceptance of danger? This was a whole different thing. That night, as Curious tried to sleep, she heard the sounds of the jungle and Rachel's steady breathing nearby. It made her think of something deep. People weren't brave. They had gotten so used to danger and living with death that they had made it a part of themselves. Accepted it. They were predators who lived with other predators and somehow convinced themselves that they were the best. The world shook with a roar as dawn broke. Curious had only been awake for about 30 seconds. She was still lying in her sleeping roll, watching the early morning light come through the jungle canopy. Rachel was already awake, sitting by the fire with a hot cup of coffee in her hands. The person looked calm and at ease, enjoying the quiet sounds of the forest waking up around them in the morning. Then the brush caught fire. The razor claw came from all over the place and nowhere at the same time. The jungle was quiet for a moment. Then 600 kilograms of pure armored rage came charging at their camp. The creature was huge, at least twice the size of Rachel. Its body was covered in overlapping plates of natural armor that shone like polished metal in the morning light. Its head was wide and flat, and its eyes were full of predatory intelligence. And its claws. Oh my God, its claws. They were each at least a foot long, curved like scythes, and they shone with a metallic sheen that told Kira's that these weren't just keratin. These were strengthened with mineral deposits that were thick enough to cut through almost anything. She had read the news. Razor claw claws could tear through the hull of a starship. They could break through armor that was reinforced for combat. They were weapons that lived. And one was coming straight at them. Kira's mind just stopped working. All of my thoughts disappeared. All of the scientific training was lost. Her body went completely stiff, and every muscle froze in place. This was it. This is how she passed away. A top predator tore them apart on a death world, thousands of light years from home. Her instincts as a predator took over completely, filling her body with paralyzing fear. She wasn't able to move. Couldn't get air. Couldn't come up with anything. Rachel didn't stop moving. The person put down her coffee cup on purpose as if she had all the time in the world. Not dropped it. Did not throw it away. She carefully set it down next to her on the ground. Then she stood up, moving smoothly and with purpose, and did something that made Kira's panicking mind go blank. She moved forward. Toward the monster that was charging. Not armed. Rachel owned a plasma rifle. It was right there, just 5 feet away from a tree. She had a knife for fighting on her belt. She had tools, weapons, and gear. She didn't reach for any of them though. She just kept walking, her hands empty and her face calm but focused. In just a few seconds the razor claw was right next to them. For something so big it was way too fast. Its claws stretched out all the way, spreading out like the blades of a terrible harvesting machine. Those claws were aimed right at Rachel's chest and were going to rip her apart in one blow. Kira wanted to scream, to tell Rachel to do something. But she couldn't speak. Her body was missing. She could only stand there in shock. Rachel moved at the last possible moment. She didn't get out of the way. She moved forward and to the side, and her body twisted in a way that seemed impossible. The razor claw strike came down, and its deadly claws cut through the air where Rachel had been standing a split second before. Rachel wasn't there anymore though. She was next to the creature's huge front leg, which was already moving. She reached out and grabbed the razor claw's leg in the middle of the attack. Kira would always remember what happened next. Rachel's fingers dug into the armored hide of the creature's leg and found gaps between the plates that Kira's eyes couldn't see. Then she turned. Her whole body turned, using leverage, momentum, and raw strength in a way that seemed impossible. The sound of breaking bones echoed through the forest like a gunshot. The razor claw's angry roar turned into a scream of pain. The huge predator stumbled because the sudden injury messed up its balance. But it was already trying to turn and bring its other claw around to hit the little creature that had hurt it. Rachel was quicker. She let go of the broken leg and moved before the razor claw could do anything. She moved around the creature's side and jumped onto its back in one smooth motion. Her fingers somehow got a grip on the plates that looked too smooth to hold onto as she grabbed its armored skull. The razor claw thrashed around, trying to throw her off, but Rachel's legs were wrapped around its thick neck, keeping her in place. 3 seconds. That was all it took. It took 3 seconds from the time Rachel grabbed the creature's skull until everything was quiet. Everything was being recorded by Kira's helmet camera. Later, when she was brave enough to watch it again, she would see those 3 seconds broken down into terrifying detail. She would see Rachel's hands move with surgical precision as they found weak spots in the armor at the base of the skull. She would be able to see exactly how hard and at what angle Rachel was pushing. She would see how well the human did the razor claw in a mechanical way. But at the time it was just a blur. A horrible, violent blur of motion. The razor claw's loud roars turned into soft whimpers. After that, the whimpers stopped. The huge animal fell down when its legs gave out. Rachel rode it down and didn't let go until the body hit the ground and stopped moving. Rachel stood up when it was over and the jungle was quiet again, except for the sound of birds flying away. The most dangerous jungle on Earth had an apex predator lying still beneath her. Not just dead. Ruined. There were many breaks in its neck. There were cracks in its skull that looked like spider webs across the armored plates. The creature that had ruled this part of the forest and killed and eaten many other predators was no longer there. Rachel stood over it, breathing heavily but not gasping. Her chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. There was a thin sheen of sweat on her face, but she wasn't tired. She looked like she had just finished a workout that was not too hard. Then Kira Sage saw the blood. Rachel's hands were bleeding, and red liquid was running down her fingers and dripping onto the ground in the jungle. The person had held on to the Razorclaw's armored hide so tightly that her own skin had ripped. The sight of it, the fact that she had just seen it, finally made Kira's legs give out. She fell to her knees and couldn't speak. Rachel looked down at her hands and turned them over to see how bad the damage was. She didn't seem very worried. She moved her fingers around to see how they felt. "Aha," she said in a soft, thoughtful voice. "That's going to hurt later." Then she looked at Kirasich and her face changed. The fight's focused intensity faded away and was replaced by something that looked almost like shame. Rachel walked over and knelt down next to the alien, which was still frozen. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked. "I know that was a lot. I apologize for making you see that. Sorry." She felt bad. Rachel had just killed an armored super predator with her bare hands in less time than it took to boil water, and she was sorry for being rude. "I really thought we'd avoid them," Rachel said as she pulled a medical kit from her pack and quickly wrapped her bleeding hands. Razor claws are usually more careful. This one must have been young and still figuring out where it belonged. Maybe they thought we were a threat or competition. She worked with her hands while talking, and her voice was calm and conversational, like they were talking about the weather. "You know they're ambush hunters? They don't usually charge that much. I think we just had bad luck with the timing." Kira finally found her voice, but it was barely more than a whisper. You killed it? With your hands?" Rachel stopped wrapping her left hand and looked at the dead razor claw. "Yes," she said simply. "I did." "How?" Rachel looked like she was really thinking about the question. "Mostly leverage. And knowing how to put pressure on things. Razor claws are strong, but like everything else they have weak spots. The vertebrae in the neck, the joints, and the base of the skull where the armor plates meet. You just need to know where to look." She finished wrapping her hands and stood up, offering one to help Kira get back on her feet. "Come on. We should probably change where we are camping. One razor claw could lead to others." Kira Sage couldn't stop shaking. Even though the air in the jungle was warm and humid, her whole body shook as if she were standing in sub-zero temperatures. She sat on a log that had fallen at the edge of their camp, her clawed hands gripping her knees as she tried to calm down. It wasn't working. She saw it again every time she closed her eyes. The feet. Rachel's movements were so fast that they were impossible. The sound of a bone breaking. The way the person killed a creature that could have ripped through a military squad with ease. Rachel was a few feet away, using the medical supplies from her pack to work on her hands. First, she used water from their clean supply and antiseptic wipes to clean up the blood. She was now putting some kind of clear gel on the torn skin, and she did it in a practiced and methodical way. As if she had done this 100 times before. Rachel said, "I really thought we'd avoid their territory," not looking up from her work. It was just another day at work for her, getting hurt while killing apex predators. She sounded truly sorry, like she was sorry for a small problem instead of a near-death experience. Razor claws are usually much more careful than that. They hunt by surprise. They watch their prey for hours or even days before they attack. That's not how they charge out of nowhere. Kira's voice came out as a croak when she tried to talk. She cleared her throat and gave it another shot. You killed it? With your hands?" "Only your hands." Rachel stopped putting a bandage around her left hand. She looked at the torn skin, flexed her fingers to see how they felt, and then looked over at the dead razor claw, which was still lying where it had fallen. "Yes," she said softly. "I did." "How?" The word came out louder than Kira meant it to, and it was edged with the hysteria she was barely able to keep under control. "That thing had armor. Was huge. Its claws could cut through the hulls of starships. And you just... She couldn't finish her thought. Rachel finished wrapping her hand and held it up to look at what she had done. She was happy with the first hand, so she started on the second. "Adrenaline helps," she said with a shrug. "When people are in danger, our bodies release chemicals into our blood. It makes us stronger, faster, and less painful. It's a way to stay alive." She carefully wrapped the bandage around her torn palm, making sure the gel stayed in place. "But really? That's not the whole story." She looked up at Kira's H and made eye contact. Those predator eyes are brown and warm, and they are so scary because they are so direct. "Humans are persistent hunters, Kira. That's how we got to be who we are. We didn't become the most important species on Earth because we were the biggest, strongest, or fastest. We did it because we were stubborn. By never, ever giving up. Rachel put the medical supplies aside after she finished with her second hand. She changed her position and sat on the ground with her legs crossed. She looked smaller and less threatening because of the change in posture. Not a threat. Kirasage realized that it was a choice. Rachel was trying to look like she wasn't a threat. Every other predator on Earth is better than us at something, she said in a calm, educational voice as if she were giving a lecture. Big cats are quicker. Bears are more powerful. Wolves are better at hunting in packs. But what about us? We can last longer than all of them. We can follow prey for days on end. We can push our bodies beyond the point where any other animal would fall apart. We can keep going just because we want to. She pointed at the dead razor claw. That thing was stronger than I was. It charges straight at me faster than I do. More armored. Those claws make you better armed. It should have won that fight by every physical standard. Rachel's face changed to one of thoughtfulness. But I've been working out my whole life. Learning how to use leverage and momentum instead of just brute force and how the body works and where the weak points are. In the end, I wanted to live more than it wanted to kill me. Kirasage looked at this little, bleeding thing that had just killed a monster. Rachel looked like a normal person. Just like everyone else. She was sitting there in her dirty field clothes, with her hair messy and her hands wrapped in bandages. She could have been anyone. There was nothing about her looks that made her look dangerous. Rachel said softly, "I know this is scary. I know what you're thinking right now. You want to know if I'm going to hurt you. If you feel safe around me. If you can trust any human." She leaned back a little, but her body language stayed open and relaxed. "But you are safe with me. You've always been safe with me. That thing came after us and I kept us both safe. That's all that took place. But you could." Kira's voice trailed off. Rachel finished the thought by saying, "Could I hurt you if I wanted to?" "Yes, I could. I won't lie to you about that. But I don't want to. That is the main difference." Kira's scientific mind was starting to win over her fear of animals. Questions started to come up, pushing through the fear. How many people are like you? How many people have this skill? Rachel thought about the question very hard. She took a long drink from her water bottle before answering. "All of us if we have to," she said at last. "What I just did. That's not a big deal. I'm not a genetically enhanced super soldier or a top warrior. I grew up camping, hiking, and learning about the world around me just like everyone else. Anyone could do what I just did if they had the right training and motivation." The words hit Kira's heart like a punch. "All of you." "Well, there's variation obviously," Rachel said to make things clear. "Some people are stronger, some are faster, and some have had better training. Kids and old people wouldn't be able to do what I just did. But what about a healthy, normal adult? Yes. When you put them in a dangerous situation, their adrenaline kicks in and they can do things that would seem impossible otherwise." Rachel got up and walked over to her pack. She took out a ration bar. She gave one to Kirasage, who took it without thinking. There are stories throughout history of people doing amazing things when things go wrong. Mothers picking up cars off their kids. Soldiers carrying their injured friends for miles through enemy territory. People living in the wild for weeks without any food or water. It's what we do. It's what we've always done. She sat back down, this time closer but still keeping a respectful distance. "But here's the most important part, Kira. The part that is most important for you to understand." Rachel's voice got louder and more serious. "We don't want to be like this most of the time. We decide to be peaceful. We decide to be kind. We choose to use words instead of violence and to work together instead of trying to control others." Kirasage could tell that her translator was having a hard time with how much Rachel was stressing that one word. "Every day billions of people wake up and choose to be kind," Rachel went on. "We could be mean. We might be violent. We can do a lot of damage. But we choose not to be. Laws and morals help us build societies. We make music and art. We help people we don't know. We work together with other species all over the galaxy." She pointed between them. "I could have let that razor claw kill you. It would have been easier, in fact. Not as much danger to me. But I didn't even think about it. I chose to protect you because I wanted to." The word hung in the air between them, full of meaning. People made the choice to be civilized. They weren't peaceful by nature. They were naturally dangerous, but they chose to hide that danger. To keep it under control. To only let it out when absolutely necessary. Kirasage looked at the dead predator, then at Rachel's hands, which were wrapped in bandages, and then at Rachel's calm, patient face. She whispered, That's scary." Rachel's face changed from angry to something that looked like sympathy. "Yes," she said. "I guess it is. But that's also why you can trust us. A peaceful species is peaceful because they can't be anything else. Every day we choose to be peaceful. That choice means something. After the noise and confusion of the jungle, the quiet of her quarters on Research Station Gamma felt almost too much. Kirisich sat at her desk and looked at the empty report form on her computer screen. The cursor in the threat assessment field blinked steadily, waiting for her to type something. Waiting for her to choose something that could change the way the whole galaxy interacts with humans. Her claws were hovering over the keyboard and shaking a little. Not this time because of fear. Because of doubt. She couldn't stop thinking about the last week, like a recording that was stuck on repeat. Rachel walked through the jungle like a ghost. Rachel understood the environment as if it were written in her own language. Rachel stood over the dead razor claw, breathing steadily. Her hands were bleeding, but her face was calm. So very calm. The Galactic Council used a number of different ways to determine whether or not something was a threat, and humans should be considered one. Very careful is what we suggest. Limited contact rules. Maybe even quarantine procedures to keep them on their death world until the Council could figure out what to do with them. Kirisich had seen Rachel rip an apex predator apart with her bare hands. She had seen Rachel move and act in ways that seemed to go against the basic rules of biology for a creature of her size. She had seen a person move with the kind of brutal speed that only military drones or engineered war beasts usually have. People were hunters. That was a fact. Not prey animals that had developed intelligence and built civilizations even though they were weak. Not peaceful plant eaters who had learned how to protect themselves with technology. Hunters. Predators. Killers who had made it to the top of their world's food chain and stayed there. They were top predators who looked like they lived in a civilized world. But Kira's claws finally touched the keyboard, but they pulled back again. She had to give this some thought. Needed to be sure. She got the video from the helmet camera of the razor claw attack. She made herself watch it again frame by frame. The creature burst out of the bushes. Its huge claws were out, ready to kill. And Rachel's answer. Kirisich slowed down the video so she could see things she had missed during the event in more detail. Rachel didn't start the fight. She had given the razor claw every chance to get away. Rachel had put herself between Kirisich and the predator in those first few seconds when she stood up and stepped forward. Keeping safe. Not attacking. The razor claw had promised to do its job. Rachel had only moved then. Only when it was clear that the creature wouldn't give up. And even during the fight, Rachel had used just the right amount of force. No more. No less. She hadn't ripped the thing apart in anger. Hadn't hurt it too much to stop the threat. It had been like surgery. Exact. The least amount of violence needed to stay alive. Rachel had said she was sorry after that. I'm really sorry that Kirisich had to see violence. The person had quickly changed to look less threatening and had taken the time to explain, comfort, and help Kirisich deal with what had happened. Kirisich opened another file. The cultural information Rachel had given them while they were on their trip. Yes, there was a lot of violence in human history. Wars, fights, and struggles for power. But it also had something else in it. Art, sound, philosophy. Tales of picking peace over war. Heroes who won by being kind instead of fighting. There are whole movements that are all about nonviolence and working together. People had come up with hundreds of different moral systems, all of which were based on the question of how to be good. How to make the right choice. How to keep their violent impulses in check and make something better. Kirisich understood more and more as she thought about it. The real strength of humanity wasn't their physical strength. They could choose. Every day billions of people woke up and decided to be nice. Decided to help. They decided to work together instead of trying to control everything. They were predators who chose to be nice. Monsters who chose to be kind. And that choice, that daily decision to be better than what came naturally to them, made them one of a kind in the galaxy. A species that was naturally peaceful had no choice but to be. They were peaceful because they couldn't be violent. But what about people? People could be very violent. Kirisich had seen it with her own eyes. And they decided not to use it unless they had to. That had meaning. That was everything. The doorbell at Kira's house rang. She looked up and saw Rachel standing in the hallway, where a small window let her see her. The person was now wearing clean clothes, had washed and tied back their hair, and their hands were still bandaged but getting better. She looked like she was going somewhere. Kirisich opened the door. Rachel. I thought you were leaving today. I am, Rachel said. Transport leaves in an hour. I just wanted to say goodbye in the right way. And to see how you're doing. Make sure you're okay after all that. The tall reptilian scientist and the shorter human stood there for a moment. Two species that are very different from each other, having evolved in very different ways, are looking at each other across a gap of biology and culture. Finally, Kira said, "I'm writing my report. About people. About whether your kind should be welcomed into the galactic community or seen as a possible threat." Rachel nodded slowly. "That's a tough choice. No need to worry or anything." She tried to smile, but Kira could tell that her shoulders were tense. Rachel cared about this. "Walk with me?" Kira asked. It was important to everyone. "To the terminal for departures?" "Of course." For a while, they walked through the station's hallways in quiet comfort. Other aliens walked by them, some staring at the human with interest and others on purpose not looking at Rachel. People had heard about what happened in the jungle. Now everyone knew what people could do. Rachel finally spoke as they got closer to the departure terminal. "I hope we didn't frighten you too much." The trip's goal wasn't that. Kira stopped moving. Rachel also stopped and turned to look at her. "You scared me," Kira said honestly. "Made me very scared. I have bad dreams about the razor claw attack. About seeing you kill it. About seeing what people are really like behind all the smiles and kind words." Rachel's face fell a little. "I'm sorry. I really am." "Don't be," Kira said. "Because you taught me something important too. The galaxy needs to know this." Rachel waited, her predator eyes focused and alert. "You were right about humans being dangerous," Kira said. "You are the top predators on a world of death. You can do things that most other species in the galaxy can't. You're scary." She stopped and thought about what to say. "But you're also the most honest species I've ever met." Rachel's eyebrows went up in shock. "How do you know that?" "Because you choose to be trustworthy," Kira said. "A peaceful species is peaceful because they don't have any other choice. But what about people? You might be violent. You could be in charge. You could win. You can do all of that. But you don't want to. You make that choice every day. And that choice is very important." For a long time Rachel didn't say anything. Her voice was soft when she talked. "That's probably the most interesting thing anyone has said about people since we first met." They got to the terminal where they were leaving. Rachel's ride was already boarding and other people were going through the gate. Rachel reached out her hand to say goodbye to the person. Kira took it, no longer scared of the touch. Rachel's grip was soft and well-controlled. "Be aware of how strong those hands are." "I hope we didn't scare you too much," Rachel said again, this time with a small smile. A smile that said, "You scared me," Kira said again. "But I'm glad you did." Rachel's face got serious. "Okay. The galaxy should know who we are. People can be the best friends you ever have. We are loyal, protective, and ready to die for the people we care about. We could also be your worst enemy. Unstoppable, creative, and absolutely not willing to give up." She held Kira's hand tightly. "We have the choice of which one we are. And right now we're picking friendship." "Don't forget that," Kira said. "I will." She saw Rachel get on the transport, saw it undock and turn toward Earth, that beautiful blue and green marble in space. After that, she went back to her room to finish her report. The cursor was still blinking in the field for threat assessment. Kira's claws moved across the keyboard and she typed with confidence. She typed in one word in the last assessment field, Alliance. She also wrote in the recommendations section below it, immediate implementation recommended. Humanity is a major military and strategic asset. More importantly, they are a species that can choose to work together instead of taking over, even though they can do both. This kind of morality based on choices makes them great partners for working together in space. Full integration into the Galactic Council with all rights and privileges that come with it. She stopped for a moment and then added one more line. Note, other species should know what humans can do. Not to scare people but to make them respect you. People have the right to be understood for who they really are. Kira sent the report to the council and then sat back in her chair. She couldn't do anything about what happened next. But she had been honest. People were scary. And that was exactly why they should have been on the side of humanity. Because the monsters who chose to be nice were the ones who were worth standing next to. Claude is an AI so he can make mistakes. Please check the answers again.